AI is already making huge decisions about our lives. Who gets a loan, who gets a job interview, you name it. But what happens when those decisions aren't just fast, but fundamentally unfair? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on AI bias, figure out how it gets into our systems, and, most importantly, talk about how we can get it out. In this quote, it's really the heart of the whole thing. See, if you're looking for some kind of magical, unbiased button you can press, you're going to be disappointed. The real secret to fair AI isn't some final piece of code. It's about building a really thoughtful, intentional process right from the very beginning.
And here's the good news. AI bias isn't some mysterious, unstoppable force. Not at all. It's a solvable problem, and it has tangible origins. And once we understand exactly where it comes from, well, then we can actually start to dismantle it, piece by piece. So, first things first. Where does this bias actually come from? I mean, to fix a problem, you have to understand its roots, right? So let's start by pinpointing the exact moments in the AI lifecycle where unfairness can creep in.
It really just boils down to these three stages. First, the data. Look, if a company's past hiring data shows they almost always hired men, and you train an AI on that data, what do you think it's going to learn to do? It's going to learn that same bias. Second, the design. Imagine you're building a model to predict job success, and it uses how close you live to the office as a factor. Well, you might accidentally penalize fantastic candidates from lower-income neighborhoods who just happen to live further away. And finally, deployment. A facial recognition system might work flawlessly in the lab, but in the real world with all its tricky lighting, it might perform terribly on people with darker skin tones.
Okay, so knowing where bias comes from is half the battle. But how do you actually find it when it's hiding deep inside your system? We can't just rely on a gut feeling. We have to make fairness measurable. Because let's be honest, you can't fix what you can't see.
This is the essential question, isn't it? And to answer it, we need specific tools. We need metrics that act like a magnifying glass, letting us see and actually quantify the unfairness that might be lurking deep inside a system's logic.
So, our first key metric is something called disparate impact. This is a simple but really powerful test that asks a very direct question. Does this AI system, let's say a tool for screening resumes, reject candidates from one group at a much higher rate than another? If the rejection rate for women is, say, 80%, but it's only 50% for men, boom, you've just found disparate impact. Next up is error parity. Now, while disparate impact looks at the final outcomes, this one focuses on the mistakes an AI makes. For instance, is a fraud detection system more likely to wrongly flag a totally legit purchase for customers in one neighborhood compared to another? If those error rates aren't the same across all groups, you don't have error parity. Simple as that.
All right, so we've figured out the sources of bias, and we've learned how to measure it. Now for the most important part. What do we actually do about it? Let's open up the toolkit and look at some practical steps for building fair AI. Let's kick things off with 3 powerful technical fixes. First, balance your data. This just means you have to actively make sure all groups are fairly represented in the info the AI learns from. Second, you can run masked evaluations. This is where you test the AI's decisions while hiding sensitive info like gender or race. It's a fantastic way to see if it's using sneaky, unfair proxies. And third, and this is a big one, always keep a human in the loop. A person can catch critical nuances and context that an algorithm is pretty much guaranteed to miss.
But tech alone is not the answer. You can't just code your way out of this problem. The human side is just as critical. You've got to establish a clear policy that defines what fairness even means for your specific project. You need thorough documentation that explains exactly how your system works, and crucially, you have to give people a clear way to appeal an AI's decision when they think it got something wrong.
As we start to wrap this up, it's so important to remember that fixing bias isn't about flipping a switch and then declaring your AI fair forever. The path to fairness, well, it's an ongoing journey. It's not a final destination you just arrive at.
And that brings us to the most crucial point of all. Building fair AI is not a one-and-done task. It's a continuous cycle. You have to constantly test its performance, you have to monitor its impact in the real world as society itself changes, and you have to be ready to adjust your models and your processes. It's a constant commitment to being vigilant. And that leads to the final question I want to leave you with. It's not just about whether your AI is fair today. It's about whether you've built a system, a whole process, that is designed for fairness tomorrow and the day after that. Because really, the future of fair technology depends on it. Thanks for joining this explainer.